This is the Smart Crosscut. Today I'm retiring it and I'm replacing it with something much simpler, much more efficient, and even has a greater range of possibilities. I'm Ron Paulk, and this is the Smart Wood Shop. If you'd like to get a detailed set of plans to build a smart wood shop for yourself or one of my workbenches, there's a link in the description of this video down below where you can go and purchase plans and download them instantaneously 24/7, 365. The Smart Crosscut was a major evolution from the original Paulk Crosscut jig. This was a lot simpler, a lot easier to set up, and particularly much easier to calibrate because the square calibration was automatic, being used on any of the Paulk workbenches, and in fact on any MFT table with the 20mm holes, 96mm spacing, which is industry standard worldwide. So I could just attach one portion with bench dogs and then the cross-cutting section with bench dogs, and by butting them next to each other, the rail for the length was precisely calibrated, and there was a calibration screw for that fine adjustment. It's been very handy, but there's a couple of issues that I wanted to work out and gave a lot of thought to this and realized that it wasn't a matter of improving it a little bit or an evolution to the third version, but rather, just like all of the Paulk Smart benches and accessories in 2020, everything from the past has been set aside and rethinking it from top to bottom. So the replacement for it, the new Paulk Smart Crosscut, is not an evolution. It joins the Paulk Smart series, the Paulk Smart family, in being a revolutionary change. Now, some of the shortcomings of it were, it's a two-piece tool. So I had the crosscut section, which was clamped or put down with bench dogs, and then the rail for squaring to this and the dimension. The dilemma was I would set it up for cross-cutting, but once the operation of cross-cutting was done, I needed to remove it because this track, this T-track, acted as the rail to square. So the material would go up to this and butt up into the stop. And then with the track on here next to the bench dogs, that would give me that perfect square. Again, no calibration with the square because everything is calibrated through the holes in the bench, which are machine shop CNC layout with that Parf Guide Mark II. I can trust that any set of holes in any direction are going to be perfectly square. So I could set this up in multiple locations depending on what project I was doing, whether I needed more outfeed or more length in my cut. But the rail that was necessary to butt the material in to keep it square was always there. And so when I went to another operation, it would be up in my workspace. And of course I didn't want to cut it, and it would just, material would be sitting on top of it. So I needed to remove it and just have this on the bench for cross-cutting operations. This is the Paulk Smart Crosscut, the PSCC. It is now down to a single piece rather than two pieces. And that T-track that created the backstop, the squaring, is gone. I have made my own T-track in this, just the way I did on the fences for the router table and also for the extension tracks on the miter saw. These tracks have been working out really well, so it made a lot of sense to just cut my own, and of course I could make it as long as I needed to make it. I still needed that squaring rail though to butt the material up against so that I could keep it square to the crosscut or to the track. So I came up with a floating rail, and basically this is just a stop, but it doesn't have the stop that you would butt into for length, but rather just to square up to. The material just butts up to these two surfaces, which are perfectly aligned. The floating rail just gets butt into the track and locked down, And the stop just moves up and down this scale so that I can get the exact length of cut I need. The Smart Crosscut stop could go out to approximately 80 inches. The Paulk Smart Crosscut adds a few inches to that. It'll go to about 84, 83, 84. So I get a few more inches of cross-cutting with the single piece than I did with the two-part cross-cut. The Paulk Smart Crosscut will work with any of my benches. The brand new Paulk Smart Big Bench, or the Paulk Smart Bench, or even the Paulk Smart Station. The attachment to it, I'm using these TSO Smart Connect dogs that I'm using for attachments of all of the other things, the router tables and the miter tracks, everything that works with this modular system. I'm using these very handy designs specifically for me from TSO bench dogs, which allow me to clamp with no interference. So that is a big improvement over what I used with the Smart Crosscut. I made it wider, and this allows me to have more space in the bench. It's particularly helpful when I'm using it on the narrower Paulk Smart Bench. But what it allows me to do is put the squaring dog outside of the bench because I'm able to cantilever this out, which I was unable to do with the previous design. I can mount it anywhere along the bench. And again, this is even more handy on the shorter bench because it allows me to extend the cut capacity, the support capacity of a smaller bench. With this bigger bench, I have so much bench that's less critical, but it's still handy. So it really doesn't matter what hole I choose to mount it in along here. It really depends on the operation that I'm doing. If I am making cabinets, for example, cabinet bases for 36-inch cabinets, the sides are 30 inches. And so I will rip my plywood down to its standard about 24 inches wide and then put it on the bench, and the long portion is hanging off this side and I'm coming in the 30 inches, so I'm doing a shorter cut, and in the first couple of pieces I've got more hanging on out here. So in that case it would be more handy to slide this down further and have more support on this side because there's more material on this side. So I'll just randomly grab a section here and drop in these Smart Connects. So there's no squaring calibration. There is a calibration screw to get the length dialed in, but you only have to do that once so that you know when you set the stop on 30 inches or 600 millimeters, you'll get that exact cut over and over again. But as far as getting the track square, that's automatically set up with these bench dog holes. The bench dog holes on the Paulk Smart Crosscut are also drilled with the Parf Guide Mark II, so I get perfect alignment. And you saw I just randomly picked a couple of holes and they dropped right in. And the squareness is lined up with these holes. I've chosen the 5th hole in and I've marked it. This is where the bench dogs go that square the track up. I've picked in that many just to have this extra support here, particularly again with the smaller bench. If I'm further this way, it gives me some support in front of the track. Once the track is mounted, then I have these Ujk Bench Dogs. I like these in particular, and these are the same dogs that I used with the Smart Crosscut. I like these because they lock in from the top. They have a knob that pulls this section tighter and squeezes these rubber grommets and makes it tight in the hole. So I just drop this in, and again, this 5th hole in the outside, and that puts this tall dog behind the stops, and so it doesn't get in my way. So I'll drop in this second dog, and all I need to do is just pick a hole along here. It doesn't really matter, just so it's far enough out that the width of material I'm cutting will fit in between these. And just like with the Smart Crosscut, I use my sacrificial strips, and then I use these UJK rail clips. They aren't absolutely essential. A lot of times I don't bother with them. I just push the track up tight to the dogs, but these help a little bit. They'll keep it snug in case it drifts away and I don't notice. And then this side hooks on here, and then the track is pulled tight to both dogs. And so now I know with material up against these stops, I'm going to get a perfectly square cut right at the splinter guard on the track. And my layout, my calibration for length is based from that splinter guard to the screw surface on the stop, and that can be calibrated by just moving the screw in and out. And these are easy to calibrate. I just simply bring it up close and use a combination square, just the way I showed you how to do with the TSO parallel guides for ripping or for cross-cutting. Same thing here. I'll just dial that in, and I've done that once, so the scale is set up, and I know that wherever I put this leading edge, I'll get that exact cut. And I do most of my cabinetry in millimeter, so if I wanted 600, then I would just get my eye straight over the top of the edge here and move it right to the 600, clamp it down, and now I know that my cut from the saw blade to here, I'll get exactly 600 millimeters. Now to put the material in, I just leave it hooked on that side and I can swing this out or swing it up. This is a random piece of 18 mil plywood I grabbed. It's not ripped down to 24 like a standard cabinet, but if I were doing cabinetry, I'd have a whole bunch of these ripped to the proper width. And then I would set my stop on the depth that I need. And again, typical base would be 30 inches. And the scale that I'm using, this fast cap scale, is both metric and standard, so I can jump back and forth easily. The placement of this rail is not super critical. It can float really anywhere along here. But what I like to do is push the track tight to the dog and then push it up against that. And that gives me just extra support for putting the track up right where I need it to square. With the material up tight to this rail and the rail portion of the stop, I know that I'm going to get a perfectly square cut. And because the tall bench dog is set back here, I'm able to bring the saw all the way back where it makes contact with it, and that brings it outside of the cut surface that I want to cut so that I can get the blade all the way down. I do make a small kerf in the Paulk Smart Crosscut, just the way I did on the Smart Crosscut, but it's just a couple of millimeters. I'll set the material, so this is 18 millimeters, so I would set the stop on the saw at about 19 or 20, and then I can make the cut. I don't want to cut up this perfectly good piece of 18 millimeter plywood as its full length, and I'm sure I'll have something to do with it in the future. But I have used this extensively. In fact, when I built the Paulk Smart Big Bench, I had the 2 tops, the 2 bottoms, and the 4 sides, all that had to be cut exactly to 2400 millimeters. And I was able to do that, and this did turn out exactly square. But wait, I just said I cut these 8 pieces for the Paulk Smart Big Bench to 2400 millimeters, and I just said the range of the Paulk Smart Crosscut was about 84 inches or around 2100 millimeters. So how did I get 2400 millimeters? I added this stop extender. In fact, I had the plans for this all done before the Paulk Smart Big Bench plans, and I pulled back because I needed to go back into the plans and add this. So this is included. To extend the cut capacity of the Paulk Smart Crosscut, I'll just simply remove the standard stop, which, by the way, will take care of about 99% of the cross-cutting I need to do. But it is nice to know that I can go to over 8 feet with this one addition. So I'll slip this in its place, and it just requires some simple addition. I know that I have my fixed dimension of 600 millimeters, so I take whatever cut I'm wanting to do, in this case 2400 millimeters, I subtract 600 and I set it to 1800 millimeters. And the extension stop has its own support for the material. So I just slide the material out, right up against the calibration screw. And then I can make my cut and get exactly 2400 millimeters perfectly square. If you would like to get a set of Paulk Smart crosscut plans for yourself, there's a link in the description of this video down below where you can go and purchase the plans and download them instantaneously. And by the way, download means download. It's not stream. So when you download it, you have a copy of it on your device, whether it's your phone, your tablet, or your computer. Thanks for dropping into the Smart Wood Shop. You stay safe and have a great day.